Well, moving right along in my series of looking back at Zack, the films of Zack Snyder, it's time to move on to Suckerpunch. Now, this was a film that followed certainly his creative successes with Dawn of the Dead, 300, and Watchmen. So now this one is actually based on an original story between him and some other guy I forget. That's not nice. Look, I apologize. I'm forgetting the guy's name, and I think it's one I had trouble pronouncing anyway. But the point of the matter is, this was a completely original story rather than adapting comic books and other films. And so Suckerpunch had primarily showed the imagery of it, that it was going to make use of the steampunk aesthetic, which has never really, as far as I know, had any definitive stories within that genre. I'm sure someone can write down below. BioShock never really appealed to me much, but as far as any stories within the genre, like medieval fantasy and science fiction, a lot of those certainly do. But the steampunk narrative, I'm not so certain about that. The cyberpunk, of course, is the Matrix and whatnot. But anyway, it's not a steampunk story. It's the quite a used theme of the dream within a dream within a dream scenario, and by the time the movie's over, was it worth sitting through it? Because none of it really happened. Or did it? That sort of thing. Certainly, David Lynch does this a lot. Or does he? But here, this is Zack Snyder's stab at that sort of thing. And it has all the geek imagery of very sexy girls and all these fantastic fantasy worlds. And that sort of thing. And this is a commentary on the sexualization of women and the exploitation of them in these visuals and whatnot. But at the same time, the chief criticism against him was that is exactly what he's doing, because he had a cast of sexy women going through the motions of all these fantastic scenarios. Yeah, but then how is he supposed to say that round and round you go? So the whole thing starts off as a very dark fairy tale. The main character here we only know as Baby Doll. Has a terrible stepfather. Her mother has died. Her younger sister she's blamed for the death of her younger sister, so we assume that the father did some horrible things to her. And she's hauled off to an insane asylum, and the orderly is paid off to forge the signature so that Baby Doll can receive a lobotomy. Therefore, she can never testify against her evil stepfather. In order to cope with this, she escapes into fantasy world. So the first fantasy world is that she's not in an asylum, but is rather an orphan who has been sold off by a corrupt priest to a brothel, and that there's some guy coming along who's going to pick her up as one of his concubines or what have you. And meanwhile, the brothel puts on shows, and all the girls need to learn how to dance and put on a good show for the patrons. And so this is this dismal world she's escaping to. That's more of an escape. I don't know why that would be her first world to escape in. But through that, the idea is there's a means to escape the brothel building, and she needs the other girls to help her out, and they're gonna get out of this nasty place. And one of the distractions is Baby Doll's ability to dance. Now, she dances very well. Apparently, we never get to see the dance, because in doing so, she escapes yet again to another fantasy world. So the first one is, of course, the steampunk world that has all the visuals looking like World War I, but with these fantastic. Oh no, that was the second one. The first one was the samurai business, where she takes on a couple of samurai, and there she's initially in her sailor outfit and all that, which pretty much maintains her standard look. And that whole thing of anime movies and whatnot, that's what that is. And then finally, yes, the the steampunk one shows up in the World War One, which World War One kind of close to a steampunk world, wasn't it? Yeah. So, and then finally, it goes even further in a more fantastic imagery. The steampunk soldiers are kind of zombies at this point, and then there's all this fantastic battles there, and then the other was a World War II looking one, but with Lord of the Rings characters thrown in medieval stuff and that sort of thing. Then finally a fantastical sci-fi world. You can see what looks like, I guess, Jupiter or Saturn on the skyline, but with Vietnam era helicopters and this sort of mishmash of all that. All of it is her dream-like interpretations of what she's trying to do, which is escape. She's always trying to escape, and she's in this horrible state. And ultimately, it all goes back to that she's really in the asylum, and she gets the lobotomy. And that's that. And then they do this thing where you can't see her face until the end, and it turns out the only one to escape was this other girl named Sweet Pea, and she escapes. But each time that she would go into these fantasy worlds, they're aided by this man. And at the beginning of the movie, it describes your angel could take the form of a young girl or an old man. Well, the old man is the angel, I suppose. But at the end, which is supposed to be the real world, there he is driving the bus and helps Sweet Pea escape. So was this yet another dream? And you don't see Baby Doll's face at the end after she's had the lobotomy, but then you finally see her and she's like, oh, now she's finally escaped. I would have thought it would have been better to reveal that Sweet Pea was Baby Doll the whole time dreaming this stuff, and there she is, and in her mind she escaped, but she really didn't, and the angel came for her and took her away. But ultimately, it certainly is a great display of Zack Snyder's abilities for flashy visuals, which are fun to look at. They're really extraordinary, and it left me wishing he had done an actual steampunk world movie, that was real. That this was some world and there's some war going on or what have you. But instead, it's just Baby Doll's a fantasy world that she escapes to from the horrific reality. But then again, the way it ends, was any of it real? I mean, like I said, the whole thing begins like a very dark fairy tale, evil stepfather. Was any of that real? And you're left not really knowing. But it just doesn't grab me enough to go, yeah, maybe it didn't happen. I don't know. I just don't think this is a pathway that Snyder plays to his strengths. So this one, I didn't really like it. So he finally stumbled. I like the other three films, but this one, not so much. I just don't think it came together for a full-on force unto itself. So that's too bad. But again, it does show a display of his abilities with action and visuals and all that. He's superb at that. But ultimately, the story overall is kind of weak and lacking, I thought. And it's just, was it all a dream? Yeah, well, maybe so, but so what? I don't really care. And Suckerpunch didn't really give me much of a punch, but maybe it made me a bit of a sucker. But still, great visuals and special effects and all that stuff of what he really knows how to do and utilize it better than others that I've seen utilize that stuff and that technique. And it's too bad they didn't give him a shot at Star Wars, but too late for that. Oh, boy. So there you go. That's all I can say about poor Suckerpunch. Better luck next time, huh? Well, what was next time? Well, it's back to comic books. Of course, once again, a recent reboot of Superman had failed, and so they went back to the drawing board and eventually become to Zack Snyder. Chris Nolan had just recently finished his Dark Knight trilogy, and they apparently approached him, what can you do for Superman? And he agreed to produce a Superman movie, but he would not direct it, so he sought out Zack Snyder, and of course this resulted in Man of Steel. So that will be our next film in my series of looking back at Zack. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe, and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my many stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Yeah, that's right, you. And another link down there will take you to my BitChute channel, where I also keep my videos, because you just never know if there will still be a YouTube with the way things are going. You just don't. So check me out at BitChute. Again, thanks for watching.